Hey guys, what's up? This is Don and welcome to another Cinema 4D tutorial. And today I'm going to be showing you how to create this scene. It's a tree, and what's interesting about it, you actually get to see it grow. So starting with the trunk, then the branches, then some secondary branches, and then the leaves. And this was all done using the hair in C4D. So we'll be taking a look at how we do this. In part 1, we are just going to build the tree as it is when it's finished growing. And then there will be a second part. We'll be taking a look at how to actually set it up in a way that you can animate it growing, because that is actually a little bit tricky. And you have to be very careful how you deal with it. So let's head into Cinema. This is what the scene looks like at the moment. Just the tree itself. I've got a camera sort of going around, and I'm using the physical sky just for some basic lighting. I am gonna create a new project, and let's start building the tree. So the first thing I will do is to create a plane object and give this width and height segments of 1 and 1, and then a height and width of say 50 and 50. And this piece of geometry is going to be carrying the entire tree. You'll see what I mean as we go along. But I'm going to make this editable, so if I hit C, I can then go to simulate hair objects and then add some hair. And by default, you will get these 4 hairs standing on the vertices or the points. And by default, hair is dynamic, so this will start to fall because of gravity. I am actually going to be switching off dynamics simply because I don't want things to be changing around if I hit play and so on. We can enable it later, but for now let's switch it off. And I'm going to go to the guides tab. This is with the hair object selected, and in the link here you can see that we have our plane. If for whatever reason you don't see any hairs, it's probably because you don't have the link set up. So just drag this here and it should be all good. We're gonna go to the root. This is what the hairs attach to. So by default it's set to polygon vertex. We only want 1 hair. This is going to be our trunk, so we want it to be in the middle of our plane. So we'll change the root from polygon vertex to polygon center. And then what I'm going to do is change the length to 500. So we have this 1 long hair. Okay, I'm going to go to the generate tab, and this is what we use to create the geometry. Once we have the guide, we need to fill it up with some volume. So if I go to the type drop down, I can change this to circle. And you can see we have a lot of hairs. This is because if we go into the hair tab here, it gives us a count of 500, and it doesn't care where we put the guides. We have to change this root settings here. We have to change it from auto to as guides. And now we are only going to get hairs generated where the guides are. So what I can do now is to go to the hair material, and in fact I will close this window and I will edit the materials in the attributes section here. I'm going to go to the thickness tab, and at the root I will set this to be say 50. And you see our geometry coming together nicely. I'm going to go to the tip and set this to be 5. And if I go back to the hair and go to the generate tab and change the type. Now before you couldn't see it because the geometry was so thin, But if we cycle through these, we should be able to see some changes. So there's a few different modes which you can see immediate results for. So there's flat, which is basically just a flat plane. We have triangle, which is pretty self-explanatory, and square and circle. Those are the ones that I will be using for this tutorial. For the trunk, let's use a circle. Okay, looking pretty good. I'm gonna go to the hair material, go to the basic tab, and we are gonna enable the kink. And this is what gives it some randomness in its shape, so that it just doesn't go straight up. And then I need to go to the kink tab and maybe lower the strength to something like 5%, because I don't want it to be all over the place. Okay, this looks pretty good. We can rename this hair to be called the trunk, and then I will duplicate it and call it branches, like so. And I need to create a new hair material. So if I just duplicate the first one, go to the basic tab, I can change the name to be branches, and the first one to be trunk. Let's drop this branches texture onto our branches, and if we go into the branches hair object, we want to go to guides, and then the link, we want to change this to reference the trunk. To begin with, the trunk was referencing the plane because it sat on that plane. Now we want the branches to sit on the trunk. So if I drag the trunk into the link section in the branches hair object, you're gonna see it just sort of sit at the top. And this is because of the root type we are using. It's still set to polygon center. So to have this appear as branches, we need to change this to polygon area, and let's give it a count of 7. And now you're gonna get this weird looking geometry. It's just sort of growing on top of our trunk. This is because we have to go to the editing drop down here and reroute and regrow all the branches so that they appear in a way that makes a little bit more sense. This is way too long, so I'm gonna change the length to say 350. That's probably still too long. I'm gonna go to 250. And if I were to increase the number, say to 10, I saw one of them appear just here. I'll just have to go to reroute and regrow, and you see they redistribute randomly along the trunk. If you go to the growth drop down, we're still in the guides section. There's a few different ways in which you can grow these secondary branches off the main trunk. By default, it's set to normals, which basically follows the direction of the polygon it's currently sitting on top of. So if we change this to say direction, we can actually direct this in the X, Y, or Z. So if I set it to X and regrow, they're all going to go in the X direction, and the Y and the Z. Obviously, we want some random distribution pointing in all directions, so the default normals is going to work just fine. I'm going to reduce the number though to just 7, and then just regrow everything to make sure all is good. Okay, so we have our branches. We need to maybe change the size. So if I go to the texture, go to the thickness tab, I can change the root size to be 25 and the tip to be just 1. And I'm gonna go to the kink and increase the percentage to maybe 30%. The branches can be a little bit more bendy and twisted. That's fine. Right, this is looking okay, but I would prefer if some of these arms were sort of equally distributed around the trunk. At the moment, most of them are on this side here, and you have these three on the other side which are almost pointing in the same direction, so it looks very uniform, and I'm not really digging that. So what I'm going to do is to individually move these different hairs. I'm going to go to simulate hair selection, and let's undock this tab, and then I will go to simulate hair tools, and I will undock this also. I'm gonna grab the move tool, and if I just sort of look directly at this and then just click anywhere and move up, you can see now I'm controlling the direction of the hairs, and that will happen if you don't have anything selected. You can move each hair individually by just going to live selection, and let's say we want to grab this one over here. We can just go back to the move tool and sort of shift it back in this direction, and you have a lot of control with this. You can point it in whichever direction you want. You can stretch it out and just sort of push it back this way. I'm gonna go to live selection, and because I'm only gonna be jumping between the move tool and the live selection tool, I can just jump between the two using space. Whenever you're using any tool in Cinema 4D, space bar will hop between the last two controls or tools you have been using. So I want to get over here and move this. And this is looking pretty good. I think I want to grab this point. If we look from directly above, we can see there's not a lot happening over here. So I can just move it in that direction. I'm going to press space to hop back to the live selection, and then I will press space to go back to move. I'm going to move this one sort of in this direction. So I'm basically just trying to distribute it in a way that looks more like a tree, because before they were just kind of bunched up in one side of the axis, and that didn't really look too good. And when you're happy with your selection, we can move on to the next step, which is adding some secondary branches or twigs, and then we're going to be adding some leaves afterward. I'm going to close both of these tabs. We can probably bring them back a little bit later, but I'm going to duplicate the branches and call them twigs. Let's duplicate the hair material and also call it twigs. And then if I go to, we can change that after. I was going to change the thickness, but let's generate the twigs first and then play around with the thickness. So if I go to twigs, I'm going to go to the guides tab, and let's link them to the branches. So what we have now is the trunk is linked to the plane, the branches are linked to the trunk, and now we have the twigs which are linked to the branches. I'm going to set the count to maybe 50 of these, and you can see they're just kind of all over the place. So if we regrow, they're going to look more random even, but we can change the length to say 100, and then go to the texture, and in the thickness tab we can change the root size to be maybe just 5 and the tip to be 0. And we don't have the texture applied onto here, that's why we're not seeing any changes. So let's just drop that onto there, and now you see what we have. We now have these twigs coming off the main branches. We can maybe give ourselves a little more of those. So if I maybe say 65 and just regrow to redistribute them, I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna grab the move tool and just try and point most of these up as much as possible, because if you look at the base here, we have a lot of these just kind of sticking into the ground. So I am gonna go to simulate hair selection. Let's grab the live selection and just grab a few of these points down here whilst holding shift to make a multiple selection. That looks pretty good. And then I can go to simulate hair tools, and let's undock this. I'm going to also undock the selection, and I'm going to go to the move tool and just bring those points up like that. Maybe just stretch them out a little bit. That looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go to a live selection, click in an empty space to deselect everything, and then I'm going to get the move tool and just point everything up a little bit. Okay, I think this is fine. However, I think for the twigs, we probably have too much geometry here. We don't need that many segments. So what I'm going to do is to go to the twigs, go to the generate tab, and set the type from circle to square. So we have less segments, and that just looks a little bit cleaner. We don't need that many segments for such a small and thin object. So those are the twigs finished. I'm gonna duplicate this and call it leaves. If I go to the guides, I can link it to the twigs, and I'm gonna duplicate this material, place it onto the leaves. I'm gonna go to the length in the guides, and let's just lower this to maybe 45 or so. This is going to be very short leaves, but there's going to be lots of them. Maybe even 35. I'm going to go to the texture we just duplicated. Let's call this leaves. And the thickness, we are going to increase the root size to be, say, 25. And we need to change the type of geometry we're generating. So if we go to the type tab, we can change this to flat, because leaves are flat. So we end up with leaves which look like this. And they look like triangles at the moment. That's fine. We just need to go into the thickness tab and change this curve here. I'm going to add a point by hitting Control and clicking on the blue line, and then dragging the first point all the way down. And this graph represents the size values along the leaves. And obviously we start off with 25, but we've brought that down to 0. The tip is already 0, so it kind of points back out again. I think I'm maybe going to lower the thickness to maybe just 20. And if I go to the leaves here, I'm going to go to the guides and set the count to 500, and then I'm going to regrow them. So now they're going to be sort of all over the tree and all over the little twigs. And this is actually looking pretty good. I think the leaves are slightly too long, and the twigs are probably a little bit too thick. Same goes for the secondary branches. So if I go to the branches, first of all, I will set I have to do this in the material. I will set the root width to be just 20, and I'm also just going to add another one of those points to the graph here, and grab the first point and bring it to about 0.5, just so this kind of tapers in a little bit. I think it looks a little bit cleaner that way. Then let's go to these twigs, and again we need to go to the actual texture. I want to change the root size to be just 3, just so this is a little bit thinner. And the leaves, I'm gonna change their height, and this is changed in the guides to maybe just 30. And let's see how this looks. They all seem to be a little bit cut off at the end. They're not pointy, or at least some of them are not. So if I go to the leaves in the thickness tab, I'm just gonna bring this down here and see how that looks. Just kind of points it off a little bit more, and that gives us a better leaf shape. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this, and obviously at the moment this just looks like a lot of gray polygons, so we can't really see where things end or start or finish. So let's create a few simple textures. I'm gonna just get a new material. I'm gonna edit it over here. I'm so used to opening up the dialog box, I forget you can actually just edit materials in the attributes here. Let's use like a green. Let's place this one on the leaves, and let's duplicate it and go to like a brownish color, maybe slightly desaturated, a little bit more red. And let's drop this onto the rest of our pieces. And this is the final result. And of course, I pretty much followed the settings which I set for the original example, but you don't have to do that. You can create any combination of linked up hair objects to create all sorts of different plants. This is not just limited to trees. You could maybe try and build flowers, maybe just grass or something. The possibilities are endless, really. You can do a lot. Just one quick thing before we end this first part. If I go to the leaves, I'm going to go to dynamics and re-enable this. So now when I hit play, you can see they're just gonna drop like that. If we go to dynamics, I can go to the advanced section. I'm gonna go and set custom segments and lower this to maybe just 3. That just makes them a little bit more stiff. And then what I'm gonna do is to go to simulate. Let's go to particles and get wind or turbulence. Let's get some turbulence, and let's just grab this and move it somewhere up here where we can see it. And if we go to the turbulence and increase the strength to say 1000, we're gonna see the leaves sort of waving about a lot. I'll lower the frequency to just 65, and maybe the strength, 1000 is too much. Let's bring it down to 100, just so we have a little bit of movement constantly on the leaves, and it kind of looks a little bit like a tree. So that's it for the first part. That is how you first of all just build the tree. In the second part, we're going to be taking a look at how to animate this to grow, starting with the trunk, and then the branches appear, and then the twigs, and then finally the leaves. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something new, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.